Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a big round of applause for our keynote speaker, Rabbi YY Jacobson.
I am not from Toronto, I'm not from Canada, I am from New York. And I left the United States of America on this historic day in my country to join you here at the JYN in Toronto. Why? Why would any sane human being leave America on this day? The answer is, the Pentagon notified me that tonight Canada will be closing its borders for the next 8 years. So here I am, together with you. That's the political reason I'm here. The spiritual reason I'm here is the only thing more important than being in America, in the thicket of the historic drama unfolding before our eyes and ears on this great, or what will turn out to be miserable day. The only thing that can justify my departure from my great and blessed country, or at least blessed till this day, was joining the extraordinary, miraculous, and stupendous work of the Jewish Youth Network. Now, you know, a few days ago, don't applaud rabbis, they think you want more. Listen to my advice. A few days ago, Mr. Trump, you heard the name? Went to campaign in Florida. Florida's a battleground state. He went to Florida. Where do you go to Florida? You go to a Jewish old age home, what we call a home for assistant living. Donald walks in and he meets a 99-year-old Jewish woman. He looks at her and he says, "Do you know who I am?" And she's like, "No, my son, I don't. Who are you?" "You don't know who I am?" She says, "I don't. Tell me who you are. Look at me. Look at the blonde hair. Look at the charm. Look at the stature. Look at the charisma. Look at the power. Look at the luster." She says, "I don't know who you are, son. Tell me who you are." He is now very upset. He's outraged. "You tell me right now who I am. The whole world knows who I am by now. How dare you not know who I am?" Another woman walks over to him, an 89-year-old woman. She caresses him on his cheek. And she says, my dear, don't get so upset. I will call the head nurse." You see, this happens very often around here. "But I will call her and she will tell you who you are." It's fine. I thought about this special moment because in my mind it captures one of what I see as the 3 historic mission statements of this great community and organization of the Jewish Youth Network, to allow, number one, so many youths of our people to know who they are, to be able to capture identity. There is no gift like the gift of knowing who you really are. You know, there's a famous Jewish psychiatrist, Rabbi Twersky. Dr. Twersky's on an airplane. And he looks like he is a very Hasidic Jew. He has the round black hat. You know those hats? Big square white beard, long black coat, the real thing. A Jewish woman is sitting near him in the plane. She turns to him and tells him in Yiddish, "Du bist a Schande. You're a disgrace. If you would only dress like the rest of the world, there wouldn't be anti-Semitism anymore. But because you insist on standing out and being different. That's why they hate us. Why can't you just be normal and integrate? He looked at her, and in a perfect Oxford English, he says, I fail to comprehend the verbiage of your dialect. The verbiage of your dialect. What language are you speaking? She's like, who are you? He says, I am Amish. She says, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were Hasidic. He says, no, that's so kind of you. I am Amish. She says, oh, I love the Amish. He says, that's so nice. Why? She says, because you're a minority, but you maintain your heritage with such dignity and such pride. Keep it up. He looks at her, and now it was his turn to respond in Yiddish. He says, aha, oi bich wollt gewen Amish, hast du mich lieb. If I would have been Amish, you'd love me. Now that I am one of your own, you're embarrassed by me. I bless you that you should be able to cherish in your own people that which you cherish in others. In an era of accelerated anti-Semitism, the one thing that is worse than anti-Semitism is when it causes self-hate, self-doubt, self-denigration. And who, if not the youth, so desperately need a sense of internal dignity and pride in who we are as individuals, in who we are as a people. But it's more than that, not only who you are, but also dignity. What is the meaning of life? You know, the other day there was a bar mitzvah, and a Jewish boy comes over to his mother and says, Mom, at the bar mitzvah I want to speak about our history. Where do we come from? And mother tells him about the lineage of the family. He says, no, all the way back. Where do we come from? Oh, mother says, where do we come from? In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. And then on the sixth day, he created Adam and Eve. And they decided to have children, unfortunately. And the rest is history. Or actually her story. And there was Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Leah. And here we are. Wow. He goes over to Dad. Dad was a proud graduate of Columbia University. Dad, where do we come from all the way to the beginning? And Dad says, evolution has been going on for 15.3 billion years. We have evolved from apes. And where did the apes come from? They evolved from monkeys, and monkeys from other primates. And where did it all begin? Dad says it began in a primordial soup that some people call a cholent. So where do we come from? What's the beginning? Dad says it was gas and bacteria. He comes back to mother and says, Mother, I'm really confused about my bar mitzvah speech. I want to talk about where we come from, but you told me that we come from God, Adam, Eve, Abraham, Sarah, and Dad tells me we come from apes, monkeys, gas, and bacteria. What should I say? Where do we come from? And mother says, there's really no contradiction. You see, your father was talking about his side of the family. And I am talking about my side of the family. But friends, I think there's a profound message here, because every teenager that walks into the Jewish Youth Network, all of your children or grandchildren, when you're 14, 15, 16, your hormones are raging. Your idealism is burning. You get into an attitude. You remember the attitudes? You know the attitudes? They just have this attitude. And at that moment, you need a Rabbi Shmuley to be able to tell you, you could look in the mirror and you could see yourself as a compilation of gas and bacteria. Or you could look in the same mirror and see yourself as a reflection of divinity. It's a choice you have to make and how you have to live. You know, the other day, there was a history professor in America who was talking to his students about the elections, and blah, blah, blah. You heard enough about it. I'm not going to give you more information. And he says, let's speak about our past. Tell me, dear students, the professor says, the author and the date of the following declaration. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Who said it and when? Very good. The students shrugged their shoulders. Teenagers, they didn't know. Nobody knew. One boy knew. You know who? A kid from Tokyo, Japan. He came to study in the States and he said right away, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, January 22nd, 1961, right? During his inauguration address. You know, it was raining that day in Washington. The teacher was very impressed with the Japanese boy and annoyed with the American teenage kids. He begins chastising them. You are a bunch of spoiled brats, lazy good-for-nothings. All you are is addicted to your Palm Pilots, to your computers, to your technology, your Facebook, your Instagram, and everything by you is I. There's nothing but I. There's iPhone and iPod and iPad, everything is I. And finally you have one game called We, and it's spelled with 2 I's. You know nothing about the great ideals, values, dreams that molded our leaders. How do you not know what John Kennedy said? And when he said it, January 61, we have to learn from the Japanese. Here is a kid who comes from Tokyo, displays so much diligence and perseverance. He knows what Kennedy said. He knows when he said it. And for 25 minutes, this teacher goes on to extol the virtues of the Japanese. And finally, there's a voice heard from the back of the classroom. And you'll forgive me, folks, we just like telling stories the way they happened. And one of the students screams out from the back of the classroom, "To hell with the Japanese!" The teacher was dumbfounded. He's been teaching for 20 years. Nobody spoke this way. The teacher screams out, "Who said that?" And the student responds, "Harry Truman, 1945. You see, friends, well, that's fine. I told you don't applaud rabbis. They think you want an encore. Listen, it's wise advice. When a teenager walks in, he can either be taught to wake up every morning and say, "To hell with the Japs. To hell with this one, to hell with that one." Or he or she can be empowered and inspired, not only to learn who they are, but also to learn that the great story of life is when you're powerful enough to ask not what the world can do for you, but what you can do for God's world. To ask not only what the Jewish people can do for you, but what you can do for the Jewish people. To ask not only what the community can do for you, but what you can do for your community. And there is something else. There was this young little girl in California who was standing at the beach, and as the tide retreated, the ocean spit out scores of starfish stranded on the shores. And this little girl felt bad for the starfish, so she lifted up starfish by starfish, and cast each one back into the water. And an old cynic looked at this little girl and said, "You foolish, stupid girl. This beach stretches for dozens of miles. There are millions, hundreds of millions of starfish stranded, dying. Even if you stand 12 hours a day and you throw in all the starfish, it won't make a difference. It's irrelevant, it's inconsequential. You're doing nothing. You're not making a difference, you're wasting your time." And the little girl lifted up one starfish, and as she threw it back into the water, she said, "For this one, I made all the difference." We live today in a world where many of our youth, our own children, nephews, nieces, grandchildren, relatives, are rattled with anxiety, with depression, with suicidal thoughts, often dysfunctional, fragmented, broken families, a lack of identity. It's easy to give up on the youth. But Rabbi Shmuley and Chani in the Jewish Youth Network knew, like all of you tonight know, for this one, I can make all the difference. I may not be able to reach every young man and woman in Canada. One day you will, Rabbi. But for this one, and for this one, and for that one, we can make all the difference. But there's something else very inspiring to me about this great organization, and I'll tell you what it is. Do you remember that moment in the Bible, in the book of Genesis? Isaac, it's going to be read soon by Jews all over the world, on synagogues, on Shabbat. Isaac wants to bless his oldest son, Esau. So he says, go hunt, bring me food, I will enjoy it, and I will bless you. And you remember the story? His wife, Rebecca, overhears what her husband says. She summons her youngest son, her favorite. And she says, I'll make the food. You dress up like your brother who was very hairy. You deliver the food into your father's room, and you will take the blessings. And that's what happens. Jacob is dressed up like his brother Esau, and he receives the blessings. And I always wondered, why did Rebecca have to deceive her husband? Why couldn't she be like every Jewish wife since? When you think your husband is making a mistake, what do? You call him in, and he comes like a shepsela, and you say, darling, you're out for lunch, and this is not how things are done, right? You know the couple that comes to the rabbi because they're having marital issues, and the rabbi says, what's going on? And the husband says, I don't understand. When we got married, she told me, you make all the big decisions, I make all the small decisions, and it's not working out that way. And the rabbi tells the wife, what did you mean? And the wife said, what I meant was simple. He makes all the big decisions. For example, what do we do about global warming? What do we do about Hillary's emails? What do we do in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Libya, in Egypt, in India, in Pakistan, in Iraq? This is my husband's turf. He makes the decisions. I don't mix in. All the small decisions, for example, where we live, which shul we don't step foot into, how many pairs of shoes I buy an hour, small inconsequential decisions I make, and my husband does not mix in. I don't understand. Why can't Rebecca go to her husband and say, Yitzchak, you're a good guy, but Esav is a wicked kid. You're naive. This kid is not worthy for the blessings that got to go to Jacob. Why does she have to outsmart her husband? And my dear friends, when I look at the work of the Jewish Youth Network, I know the answer. One of the greatest Hasidic masters explained, open your hearts. You may find it a little interesting. On that table, you may find it interesting. I'm not as dumb as I look. Thank you. Thank you. You may find it not so boring. And they give the following explanation. Rebecca was the ultimate Yiddish mama. She was the ultimate Jewish mother. At that moment, she had to make a fateful decision. Who will be getting the blessings of Jewish eternity? If she would have told her husband to bless Jacob, who would receive the blessings? The Jew, Jacob, who looks Jewish. But Rebecca knew that there will be a generation of Jews who are Jewish, but externally, they may not be enmeshed in Jewish life. Externally, they may be dressed in the garments of Esau, but internally, they're Jacob. Do we give up on them? Do we say survival of the fittest? You don't have a place in the Jewish community? So at that moment, she made a decision. Who will get the blessings? Jacob, who looks like Esau. Jacob, who's dressed like Esau. There will be no Jew who will be left behind. I don't care how much the Jew knows, how much the Jew observes. I don't care how affiliated he or she is, how knowledgeable or how ignorant, how religious or how secular. I don't look at the external garments and the external physique or demeanor. Every single Jewish child, every single Jewish youth is embraced with unconditional love, commitment, and dedication. But you know what else I see? And this is actually something historical. The Talmud says that when the temple the Talmud says, when the temple was about to be burnt, you know what happened? Pirchei Kohuna, the young priests, the teenagers, had the keys. They went up to the Temple Mount, and they threw the keys up to heaven, and they said, God, you're allowing your temple to be destroyed. Take back your keys. And the Talmud says, in a glaring, fascinating image, a hand came down and retrieved the keys. And they jumped in to the Babylonian flames that consumed the temple. The young teenagers had the keys to Jewish holiness, to Jewish eternity. And they returned it back to heaven. That's what happened then, 2,500 years ago, when the first temple was destroyed on Temple Mount. Today again, we look at our youth. And let's face it, I go to many, many dinners, lots of fundraisers, great institutions. But the JYN is a different type of institution. Because most institutions, even educational institutions, focus around either a school or a shul, a synagogue. But what about most Jewish youth who don't come to synagogues? And most of them who don't attend Jewish schools, they are often lost and ignored from the horizon of the Jewish people. The unique paradigm shift of the JYN is, don't view the youth like we usually view them. In many communities, shuls and schools, we almost wait for people to grow up. We tell the 14-year-old, hopefully you'll grow up soon and you'll become a mensch. It's almost like this painful stage when we have to endure our girls and boys growing up until finally, what do they say? When is a fetus viable? Scientifically, it's a big argument. By a Jew, when is a fetus viable? When he graduates medical school. But till you don't graduate medical school, all I have from you is tzaris, no nachas. But Rabbi Shmuli's message is, boys, girls, you got the keys. The youth has the keys. They have the keys to open the doors and to close the doors. Because it's in the youth where you got the passion, where you got the life, where you got the vibrancy, where you got the vitality, where you got the idealism, where you got the action, the fun, the joy, the drama. Don't wait till they grow up and hope for the best. This is where the keys to Jewish eternity lay. This is where the keys to the Jewish future lay. This is where the keys to the Beis HaMikdash, to the Holy Temple lay. So in the JYN, the Jewish Youth Network, the message is, kids, don't throw up the keys. Don't give away the keys. You have the keys and don't give them back to heaven. You hold on to them with pride and dignity, and you will make sure the doors to our holy temple, the doors to our redemption, to our future, to our destiny, remain open. In this sense, this organization, that truthfully is first. Because it's not a Jewish youth organization associated with a shul, with a synagogue, with another infrastructure of adults. It's an organization dedicated exclusively to those who are holding on to the keys, to invest in them, to give them an awesome time, to have them have an experience of the beauty, the depth, the splendor, the profundity of Judaism. And at last, when I look around this crowd tonight, I can't help but remember this story that took place in this winter of 1942 in a city called Dąbrow in Poland. The SS gathered all the Jews living in Dąbrow and marched them out on Friday afternoon to the forest surrounding the city. They had the men dig 2 large graves, 2 large pits. And as they were digging these pits, the SS and their dogs went to enjoy a lunch filled with laughter and coarse, sadistic cynicism as a few thousand Jews sit on the earth in a forest waiting. One Jew stands up. He looks at the crowds of men, women, and children, and he says to them, "Soon the sun will be setting over the horizon, and Shabbat will come in. Next Shabbos, we won't be here anymore. We all know what these pits are for. This is our last opportunity to welcome the holy day of Sabbath. Next week, we'll welcome it in heaven. This is our last opportunity to welcome it here on earth." The Germans always want to add insult to injury. They want to destroy the body, but also the spirit. Let's not give them the second victory. Let's welcome our last Shabbos on earth with joy. And this Jew, imagine, Friday late afternoon, Dąbrow, Poland, 42, starts singing, "Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hashoreis." And all the Jews sitting around him join him. Malachei Elyoin. And the Jews sitting further hear the melody and they all join. Mi melech malachei hamelochim hakodosh baruch hu. And when the Jews sitting further hear the resonance of this beautiful melody, despite the circumstances, and the SS just a little short distance away, they all joined together, and in a few seconds, you had a few thousand Jews singing together, sitting in a forest. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hashoreis, Malachei Elyoin, Mi melech Malachei hamelochim. In the beginning, the SS found it amusing. The Jews are singing. How interesting. But as they continued to hear the melody, it made them angry. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It was too uplifting. It was too spiritual. They stood up and they approached the Jews and they say, "Verfluchtete Juden, stigen," cursed Jews, quiet, silence. But at this point, when you got nothing to lose. They knew what awaits them. And in their minds, they were at their Shabbos tables in the glorious days, sons and daughters dressed like princesses, like queens, with the gefilte fish and the challah and the glow of the candles and the wine of the kiddush. They were with generations of Jews back to Abraham and Sarah, and they were just singing, "Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hashoreis, Malachei Elyoin." The Germans begin warning them, "If you don't stop singing right now, we will begin to shoot." It was meaningless. Mi melech malachei hamelochim. And shoot they began. 2 people ran, dodging bullets. They made it into the depth of the forest, joined the partisans, survived the war, and always told the story about the final moments of the holy community of Dąbrow, slain by the SS right before Shabbat, as their melody was interrupted by the brutal gunshots that gunned down such a sacred and beautiful community. And when I heard that story the first time, I thought to myself, They interrupted the melody. We will now make a choice 70 years later if we will allow that melody to be interrupted, or we will ensure that that melody will continue for eternity. Who can we expect to continue that melody of Shabbat, that melody of peace, that melody of meaning, that melody of Jewish history, faith, conviction, commitment, that melody of Shalom Aleichem Malachi Asharis, if not the youth who are holding the keys to the Holy Temple? And that's why I say to you tonight, as you embark on growing this with the new building and a whole new infrastructure, I say to you, Rabbi Shmuley and Chani, to all the youth, to all the teenagers, to all the guests, to all the supporters, Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazek. You are tonight a part of not just a good, nice Jewish event. You are holding on to those who are holding on to the keys of our destiny and our future. Thank you very much.